I knew something was off with Jessica. Our marriage, which had always been filled with laughter and love, started feeling more like a scripted reality show where the plot twists were getting out of hand. The little things crept into our lives like shadows. The late nights at her yoga class that seemed to stretch longer each week, the sudden need for me time, and her phone, the way she clutched it like it was a winning lottery ticket. I shrugged it off initially. I mean, who doesn't get caught up in the whirlwind of life occasionally? But the signs became impossible to ignore. I noticed her becoming more distant. Her texts were reduced to one-word answers, and I could feel the emotional wall between us growing higher every day. It was like watching a movie where the main character realizes they're on the wrong path but can't find the courage to confront the truth. I didn't want to believe it, but my gut was screaming at me. I started to think about my own insecurities, wondering if I had somehow contributed to this shift. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough, or perhaps the spark had simply faded. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare weekends where we had no plans. I was scrolling through social media, doing my best to ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach when a post caught my eye. It was a photo of Jessica, wearing that tight red dress I loved, smiling so wide it was like she had won a prize. But what shocked me wasn't just her appearance. It was the caption, "Having an amazing time with my favorite guy, blessed." The problem. The guy next to her was someone I'd never seen before. A tall, muscular dude with a chiseled jaw and sunglasses perched on his head like he was ready for the cover of a magazine. I felt bile rise in my throat. I began scrolling through the comments and my heart sank deeper. People were fawning over her, while some asked who the guy was. Jessica never replied, and I could see a few comments that teased about her new boyfriend. I tried to chalk it up to a harmless photo, but my instincts told me otherwise. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. That evening I walked into our bedroom where Jessica was lounging on the bed, scrolling through her phone. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady though my heart was pounding like a drum. She looked up, an eyebrow raised, that familiar smirk on her face, and I felt a flicker of rage ignite within me. "About what?" she replied nonchalantly, shrugging as if she had no idea what was coming. I pulled my phone out and showed her the picture. I watched her face go from casual indifference to confusion, then to a forced smile that felt more like a mask than her real expression. "Oh, it's just a fun outing with friends," she laughed, but her eyes betrayed her, a quick dart to the side, a flicker of something that looked a lot like guilt. "You know how I am, I love to socialize." I wanted to scream. What kind of excuse was that? Socialize with a guy who looks like he stepped out of GQ? Come on, Jess, who is he? I pressed, feeling my voice shake with anger. She opened her mouth to respond but quickly closed it, that flicker of guilt transforming into a darker expression. She finally blurted out, "Fine, he's just a friend. You have nothing to worry about." But as she spoke, I could see the web of lies weaving tighter and tighter around us. My heart sank. How could she betray me like this? The confrontation spiraled into a chaotic blur of accusations, deflections, and painful revelations. I felt like I was watching a train wreck, unable to look away but fully aware that my life was about to derail. Jessica's excuses piled up higher than the ever-growing distance between us. She claimed I was paranoid, that it was nothing but innocent fun, and that I was overreacting. But I could see her facade cracking, and beneath it all lay something darker, more sinister. As we sat in the silence that followed, I felt a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me: anger, betrayal, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of sadness. I never thought I would find myself in a position where I had to question the very foundation of my marriage. I realized that the woman I thought I knew had vanished, leaving behind a stranger full of deceit and betrayal. With everything hanging in the balance, I was left grappling with the magnitude of the situation. What was I going to do? My mind raced as I struggled to think of the next steps. Should I trust her again? Could I even look her in the eye without feeling that gnawing pain? I needed a plan, one that would not only address the betrayal but also help me reclaim my life. Little did I know that revenge would soon become a central theme of my story. But for now, I was stuck in this moment, wrestling with the fallout of her lies and the reality of our relationship unraveling before my very eyes. In the days following the confrontation, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The anger was still simmering inside me, and each time I caught a glimpse of Jessica, a wave of betrayal washed over me, making it hard to breathe. She tried to act normal, cooking meals, laughing at my jokes, but it felt disingenuous, like a poorly acted scene in a bad movie. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, until she understood the depth of her betrayal, but I also knew that I needed to be strategic about how I handled this. I started to gather information, digging deeper into Jessica's life and those she surrounded herself with. I wanted to know who this guy was and what kind of hold he had over her. I spent hours scrolling through social media, finding the influencer she had become tangled up with. His name was Jake Lawson, a well-known social media personality with millions of followers. His posts screamed charisma, confidence, and a picture-perfect lifestyle that made me sick to my stomach. I stared at the photos of him and Jessica together, their smiles wide and carefree. It made me feel like a ghost in my own life, watching the woman I loved share intimate moments with a man who wasn't even on my radar until a few days ago. I didn't just want to confront Jessica with this new information. I wanted to destroy the illusion she had built around their relationship. I began to notice that Jake's follower count was suspiciously high. As I dug deeper, I stumbled across some articles and discussions that hinted at him buying fake followers to inflate his popularity. It was like finding a crack in the facade of his perfect life. I knew that if I could expose him for what he truly was, it might just shake Jessica's world enough to make her reconsider her choices. The more I researched, the more the pieces fell into place. I discovered websites that offered services to expose social media influencers who bought followers. It was a slippery slope, but it felt like the only option I had left. These weren't just followers, they were a reflection of his credibility, and if I could tear that down, I could make Jake's life a nightmare. Not only would it hurt him, but it might force Jessica to see that she was falling for a mirage, a hollow man propped up by lies. The plan began to take shape in my mind, and I felt a surge of empowerment. Revenge was not a path I had ever considered, but in this moment it felt justified. I started documenting everything I found: screenshots, follower counts, engagement rates, anything that could paint a picture of Jake's fraudulent existence. I even contacted a few bloggers who specialized in influencer marketing scams, hoping they'd have the expertise to help me expose him. As I prepared to unleash my plan, I had to keep my composure around Jessica. It was like playing a game of chess, and I was determined to stay 2 steps ahead. I feigned indifference as she continued to act as if nothing was wrong. We even went out to dinner one night, where she looked stunning in a little black dress, and for a moment I almost forgot about the betrayal. She laughed at my jokes, reminisced about our early dating days, and I could see the glimmer of the woman I fell in love with. But underneath that facade, I felt the heat of anger growing, ready to erupt. As the week passed, I finalized my plan and gathered my evidence. I was ready to strike, but first, I needed to confront Jessica again. I wanted her to see the truth, to understand the depth of her mistake. I decided to wait until the weekend, when we could sit down without any distractions, just the two of us. That Saturday, I set the stage. I prepared a small dinner, trying to make it feel normal, but the tension in the air was palpable. We ate in silence, the clinking of forks on plates the only noise filling the room. I could see Jessica stealing glances at me, probably wondering when I would bring up the elephant in the room. "Jess," I said finally, putting down my fork, "we need to talk again." She looked at me, her expression shifting from casual to serious, and I could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. "About what?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. I took a deep breath, holding her gaze. "About Jake. I've done some digging and I know what he really is." The look on her face shifted from confusion to a defensive stance, her walls coming up. "What do you mean?" She shot back, crossing her arms. I pulled out my phone and began showing her the evidence. "Look at this." I said, scrolling through the images of follower counts and articles about bot followers. Her eyes widened as the realization of what I was saying began to sink in. Those numbers can't be right. He has millions of followers. She protested, but I could see her resolve wavering. Yeah, but how many are real? How many are just bots? He's a fraud, Jess. Everything you love about him is built on a lie. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and disbelief. So what? You want me to just believe you because you're jealous? You can't even comprehend the life we're building. Building? You're falling for a guy who's not even real. He's all smoke and mirrors. I shot back, frustration spilling over. She fell silent, her bravado melting away as the weight of the evidence began to sink in. I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with anger. You're just being paranoid. You can't control who I talk to or who I become friends with. Is that what you think this is about? Control. It's about you getting played by a guy who doesn't give a damn about you. We were at a stalemate, emotions flaring, and I could feel the air thick with tension. I needed her to understand the gravity of the situation, to see that I was fighting for our relationship and not just out of jealousy. As she sat there, contemplating my words, I realized the stakes had never been higher. The path I chose to walk down would not only determine the fate of our marriage, but also expose the lies that had infiltrated our lives. I was on the brink of a decision that could change everything, and as I looked into her eyes, I knew I had to see it through to the end. The confrontation with Jessica hung thick in the air like smoke after a fire, and I could feel the pressure building. The silence that followed my accusations was deafening. Jessica's face was a mix of anger and confusion, but beneath that, I sensed a flicker of uncertainty. I pressed on, not willing to let her dismiss the reality I had uncovered. Look, Jess, I said, my voice steady but edged with urgency. I'm not trying to control you. I just want you to see the truth. You deserve better than a guy who manipulates his social media presence to seem more important than he really is. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she looked down, her fingers drumming nervously against the table. It was a small sign, but it gave me hope that I was breaking through her defenses. I've seen how you talk about him, how you light up when you mention his name. But I need you to understand this isn't just a harmless crush. He's using you to bolster his brand. If you keep getting wrapped up in this, you might end up getting hurt. I continued, my heart racing. Jessica's expression shifted slightly, the mask of anger beginning to slip. But he's just a friend, someone to talk to. You're being dramatic. Her voice was defensive, but I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. A friend, I echoed, trying to keep my voice calm. You don't get that close to someone without developing feelings. This is an emotional affair, there's no denying it. I know you, Jess. You're falling for him, and that's why I'm fighting for us. For the first time, I saw her vulnerability. The wall she had built around herself started to crumble, revealing a woman caught between the thrill of a new connection and the reality of the person she had promised to love. I just thought. He was fun, she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. Fun. I replied, my tone softening. You think this is just fun? I'm not asking you to give up your friendships, but you need to realize what this is doing to our marriage. Please tell me you see it. She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't know, okay? I just don't know. It was heartbreaking to witness her internal struggle, and I felt a surge of empathy mixed with the anger I'd been holding onto. I wanted desperately for her to see that I was still here, fighting for her, but I needed her to meet me halfway. Let's just take a step back for a moment, I suggested, trying to keep my composure. Why don't we try to reconnect? Just you and me, no outside distractions. We can figure this out together. She nodded slowly, but her expression remained conflicted. I could see the cogs turning in her mind, but I knew that part of her was still holding onto Jake, the allure of his lifestyle and influence. It wouldn't be easy to let that go. As we sat there, an uncomfortable silence enveloped us once again. I could feel the tension in the air, and in that moment I knew this wouldn't be resolved in a single conversation. I had to be patient, but I also couldn't afford to keep waiting indefinitely. I felt a fire igniting within me, a desire not only to reclaim my wife but also to take down the man who had threatened our relationship. The following week, I executed the next part of my plan. I reached out to the influencers I had discovered who specialized in exposing frauds like Jake. They were more than willing to help, hungry for juicy content that would draw attention to their blogs and social media channels. I documented everything, from Jake's inflated follower counts to the engagement rates that screamed fake. The more I delved into this world, the more I uncovered. I found connections between Jake and other influencers who had been exposed for similar offenses, and I carefully compiled a portfolio of evidence. I approached it like a detective, meticulously gathering pieces of the puzzle that would eventually lead to his downfall. All the while, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. At home, Jessica and I attempted to reconnect. We went out for walks, cooked together, and laughed at old inside jokes. But every time I looked into her eyes, I could see a shadow of doubt lingering. I wanted her to trust me again, but I also needed her to see the truth about Jake. That Saturday night, I decided to take the plunge. I invited Jessica out for dinner at her favorite restaurant, a place that held countless memories for us. As we sat across from each other, I felt a mix of determination and fear. I needed her to understand that the allure of social media fame was a fleeting fantasy, one that could shatter our reality if we let it. "Jess, I want to talk about Jake again," I said, my voice steady but careful. Her body tensed at the mention of his name, but she nodded, looking down at her plate. "What about him? I need you to see that he's not who he appears to be. I've gathered evidence and I want to show you." I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed document outlining everything I had discovered. I slid it across the table toward her. She looked at the paper, then back at me, her expression unreadable. "You're really going to do this?" "Jess, I'm doing this because I care about you. I want you to understand why this is dangerous. His life isn't real, it's a constructed image, and you're falling for it." With shaky hands, she picked up the document and began to read. As her eyes scanned the evidence, I held my breath, waiting for her reaction. Longer she read, the more I noticed the tension in her shoulders fall. Finally, she looked up, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't know. I thought he was genuine." "See, he's not. He's using you for his brand. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not because of your potential social media clout." The realization struck her hard, and I could see the light begin to dawn in her eyes. "I thought it was harmless," she said, her voice trembling. "But now, I don't know what to believe anymore." It was a turning point, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. This was my shot to pull her back from the brink, to show her that I was still fighting for us. But it wouldn't be easy, and I prepared myself for the emotional turmoil that lay ahead. As we finished our dinner, a sense of resolve settled over me. I would not back down. I would fight for Jessica, for our marriage, and for the love that had once burned brightly between us. But revenge against Jake would be the spark that set this all into motion, and I was ready to ignite that fire. After that dinner, things between Jessica and me shifted subtly. I could see she was wrestling with her feelings about Jake and the evidence I had presented. It was as if a dam had cracked, and while there were still many emotions to navigate, I felt a glimmer of hope that we could rebuild what had been damaged. But with that hope came an urgency to execute my plan against Jake Lawson. I needed to act fast before he could sink his claws deeper into Jessica. The following week, I worked tirelessly alongside the influencer bloggers I had contacted. They were excited about the possibility of exposing Jake. After all, a scandal involving a well-known influencer could garner significant attention. I sent them all my gathered evidence, detailing Jake's inflated follower count, his engagement rates, and the writing on the wall that suggested he was not as popular as he claimed to be. As I sat at my computer, I watched as they prepared to publish their findings, my heart racing at the thought of finally pulling the rug out from under Jake. The plan was straightforward. They would create a series of articles and social media posts looking into his follower authenticity, drawing attention to the ever-growing number of fake accounts. I could hardly contain my anticipation, and part of me reveled in the idea of what this would mean for Jessica. Might this finally pull her back toward me? The day finally came when the articles went live. As I scrolled through social media, I could see the ripple effects taking shape. Likes, shares, and comments were exploding. People were shocked at the revelations, with many of Jake's fans feeling betrayed, questioning the authenticity of his online persona. The attention was intoxicating, and a part of me felt a thrill at the thought of exposing him. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. I called Jessica over to look at my phone where the articles were trending. "Jess, look at this," I said, my voice barely able to contain my excitement. She took the phone hesitantly, her eyes widening as she read through the headlines. "Oh my God," she whispered, her expression changing from shock to disbelief. "Is this real?" "Yes, this is what I was trying to tell you. He's been lying to everyone. He's living a fake life." She scrolled through the comments, her face falling as the reality of Jake's deceit hit her. "I can't believe this. I thought he was genuine." The disappointment in her voice was palpable, and I leaned closer, desperate to comfort her. "Jess, you can't blame yourself. He's a master manipulator. But now you see what I've been trying to tell you. He's using you as a pawn in his game." She nodded slowly, her expression shifting from anger to sadness. "I should have listened to you. I let myself get swept away in the fantasy." The conversation turned heavy, and I could feel the weight of the moment settling between us. "It's okay. What matters is that you see it now. We can work through this together," I reassured her, but in my heart I felt the fear of losing her again. As the days went by, the fallout for Jake was swift and merciless. His follower count began to drop as fans abandoned him in droves. Brands he had worked with severed ties, and soon it was clear that the influencer's facade was crumbling. I relished in that dark satisfaction, but a part of me still worried about how deeply this would affect Jessica. I made it a point to check in on her regularly, to ensure she felt supported during this chaotic time. We spent more evenings together, reminiscing about our early days, laughing over shared memories, and slowly rebuilding that lost connection. I could see the realization settling in for her, and she began to grapple with what her feelings for Jake truly were. It was a complicated mess, and I knew we were still walking on shaky ground. One night, as we sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, Jessica turned to me with a serious expression. "I still can't believe I almost threw everything away for him," she admitted, her voice heavy with regret. "Don't dwell on the past, focus on us now. I'm here and I want to make this work," I replied, hoping to ease her burden. Jessica nodded, but I could see the storm of emotions swirling behind her eyes. "You're right, but I still need to process everything. It feels like I've lost a part of myself in all this." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I know it's hard, but you're not alone. We'll figure this out together. You're still you, and that's who I fell in love with." Over the next few days, as Jake's downfall gathered momentum, I couldn't help but feel a complex web of emotions weaving itself in my heart. Part of me was thrilled at his public humiliation, but another part felt a pang of sadness for Jessica. I wanted to protect her innocence in all this, but I knew that nothing could shield her from the harsh realities of betrayal, not even my love. The next weekend, I invited her out for a day of fun, just the two of us like old times. We headed to the amusement park we had visited early in our relationship, a place filled with laughter and joy. As we rode roller coasters and indulged in cotton candy, I could see Jessica's spirit slowly coming back to life. "Thank you for this," she said as we sat on a bench, catching our breath from the exhilarating rides. "I needed a reminder of what we have together." I smiled, feeling a warmth radiate through me. "I just want you to remember the good times, Jess. We can create more. I'm here for you every step of the way." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, I felt a sense of peace enveloping us. It was a moment of clarity, where I realized that while revenge against Jake had provided me with a sense of justice, the true victory lay in rekindling the love I had for Jessica. But just as I began to feel hopeful about our future, a text came through on my phone. It was a message from one of the bloggers I had been in touch with. Their latest article had gone viral, and it had caught the attention of Jake himself. They were going to confront him directly, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I knew this would bring more chaos, and I had to prepare myself for the aftermath. Little did I know, the confrontation would send shockwaves through our lives, and I had to brace myself for the storm that was about to hit. The day after my phone buzzed with the news about the blogger's upcoming confrontation with Jake, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I knew that this could potentially be the final nail in Jake's coffin, but I also realized that it could send shockwaves through Jessica's life once again. I had hoped that we were on the mend, solidifying our relationship with every shared laugh and moment of vulnerability. But now, the looming specter of Jake's response felt like a ticking time bomb over our heads. As the hours passed, my anxiety mounted. I couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation would bring out the worst in Jake, and I feared what his retaliatory reaction might entail. Jessica had finally started to open up to me again, and I didn't want anything to push her back into the emotional chaos. We had just begun to escape. That evening, I decided to sit down with her and discuss the impending confrontation. We were in the living room, the TV flickering in the background, but my mind was too preoccupied to pay attention. "Jess, I think we need to talk about Jake's response to the articles." I started, gauging her reaction. She looked up, concern etched on her face. "What do you mean?" "I just have this feeling he's going to lash out. He's not the type to take this lying down, and I want you to be prepared for whatever comes next." I could see her processing my words, and I hoped she wouldn't retreat into defensiveness, not after everything we had worked through. "Do you really think he will?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Honestly, yes. He's been playing a character this whole time, and now he's being exposed. It's going to be a blow to his ego, and people like that don't handle rejection well." Jessica nodded, biting her lip as she contemplated the situation. "I just don't understand why I let myself get caught up in all of this. I should have seen the signs." "Don't beat yourself up over it," I reassured her. "People like Jake are skilled at manipulation. It's how they stay relevant." That night, we stayed up late talking, discussing our feelings and fears. It felt good to connect on such a deep level again, but I knew that the impending confrontation with Jake could threaten everything we had started to rebuild. The following day, the blog went live with an article that made waves across social media. The title read, "The Truth About Jake Lawson, a deep dive into the influencer's fake followers," and it included a detailed breakdown of everything I had uncovered. The backlash came fast and furious. Fans were outraged, brands pulled sponsorships, and within hours, Jake's pristine image began to shatter before my eyes. When I looked over at Jessica, I saw her glued to her phone, her eyes wide as she read through the comments. "He's getting destroyed," she whispered, a mix of disbelief and satisfaction in her voice. "I can't believe this is happening." But as the reality of the situation set in, I could see a cloud of anxiety passing over her face. "What if he comes after me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if he blames me for this?" I moved closer, taking her hand in mine. "He might try, but remember, this is about him and his actions. You were just a pawn in his game. If he tries to lash out, we'll handle it together." Just as I spoke those words, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from one of the bloggers who had been leading the charge against Jake, and the message sent chills down my spine. "Jake wants to speak to you. He's reached out to me for an interview. He's furious." My heart raced as I processed the information. "What did you say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I told him I'd pass along any questions you had, but he's insisting on talking to you directly. He wants to confront you about the articles." "Confront me?" I echoed, feeling a mix of anger and fear. "What does he think I'm going to do? Just sit here and let him bully me?" "He's threatening legal action, saying he'll sue if the articles don't come down. But I think he's just trying to scare you." I could feel my blood boiling. "Let him try, I have nothing to hide." Jessica looked at me, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you sure about this? What if it escalates?" "I won't let him intimidate me. I've spent too long fighting for us to let him scare me now," I replied, my voice firm. We spent the rest of the evening preparing for the inevitable confrontation, me drafting a list of questions and points I wanted to make. I wanted to go into this with my eyes wide open, ready for whatever Jake had in store. The next day, the call was scheduled for the early afternoon. I felt a mix of anticipation and dread as the clock ticked closer to the appointed time. When the phone rang, I took a deep breath and answered. "Jake," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Let's cut to the chase," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You think you can just ruin my career and get away with it? I didn't ruin anything. You did that to yourself by lying to people." I shot back, unable to keep my anger in check. "Do you have any idea who I am? I have connections, I have power, and I won't let some nobody ruin my life." My heart raced as I realized he was trying to intimidate me. "You're a fraud, Jake. The truth is out and no amount of power will change that. People are starting to see you for who you really are." He laughed, a cold, harsh sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You think this is over? You're just a pawn in this game. I'll make sure you regret this." I could hear the threat hanging in the air, and I knew he meant every word. "You can't scare me, Jake. I won't back down. You should be more worried about your own downfall." The conversation spiraled into a back-and-forth exchange of accusations and insults, but I kept my ground. I could sense his rage boiling beneath the surface, and I knew he was desperate to maintain his facade as his world crumbled around him. As we ended the call, I felt a wave of relief mixed with anxiety. I had stood my ground, but I also knew that Jake wasn't done fighting. I looked over at Jessica, who had been listening intently from the other room. Her eyes were wide with worry. "He's unhinged," I said, trying to shake off the tension. "But I won't let him intimidate me. I promise we'll get through this together." "I know," she replied, stepping closer, "but I'm still scared. He's unpredictable, and I don't want anything to happen to you." I pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling her warmth against me. "I won't let him hurt us. We'll keep fighting, and together we'll come out on the other side." But there was an unsettling feeling in my gut, a sense that Jake's next move would be even more unpredictable than the last. As the aftermath of our confrontation settled in, I knew I had to brace myself for the storm that was brewing, and I would need to protect Jessica, no matter the cost. The aftermath of my confrontation with Jake unfolded like a slow-moving train wreck. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as I navigated my emotions and tried to reassure Jessica. The articles had done their job. Jake's world was crumbling, but that didn't mean he would take the loss quietly. I knew he wouldn't let this go without a fight. Every day felt like a chess match, with me bracing for his next move. My phone buzzed at all hours, with messages and updates from the bloggers who were closely following the drama. Jake was hitting back hard, attempting to smear my name in the process. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread rising within me as I read through the comments and allegations he was throwing around. He had claimed that I was the one who had instigated everything, deflecting blame and painting himself as the victim. I felt the anger boiling in my veins, but more than that, I felt an overwhelming desire to protect Jessica from this chaos. The last thing I wanted was for her to be dragged into Jake's web of lies any further. One evening, as we were curled up on the couch, the news broke. A local news station had picked up the story, and now Jake was being featured in a segment highlighting the influencer fraud scandal. Jessica and I watched as the anchor spoke about the fallout from the articles and how countless fans were feeling betrayed. The segment featured interviews from fans who had trusted Jake, and their heartbreak was palpable. "Look, he's finally being exposed," I said, a mix of satisfaction and concern flooding through me. "But this isn't over. He's going to lash out." Jessica nodded, her expression pensive. "I just hope he doesn't take it out on us. I don't want to be involved in any of this anymore." We both knew that there was no easy way to escape the ramifications of the situation. Jake was losing everything, a career that had defined him, relationships with brands, and the facade he had cultivated. But I also knew that desperation could lead him to make reckless choices. That night, as we lay in bed, I held Jessica close. I could feel the tension in her body, the way she trembled slightly as she clung to me. "I'm here," I whispered, turning to face her. "We'll get through this, together." But as the days turned into weeks, Jake's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He was posting angry rants online, trying to rally his fans against me and anyone who dared to speak out about his deception. The social media fallout became a frenzy, and I struggled to keep up with the chaos. I felt like a target, but more than that, I worried about Jessica. Then one afternoon, while I was at work, I received a phone call that sent chills down my spine. Jessica was in tears, her voice shaking as she explained that Jake had shown up at our house. I didn't know what to do. She cried, her words tumbling out in a rush. Was banging on the door, shouting about how I was going to pay for ruining his life. I told him to leave, but he just kept screaming. A surge of panic coursed through me. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? No, I didn't let him in. I called the cops and they came quickly, but he ran off before they arrived. I'll be home as soon as I can. Just lock the doors and stay inside, I said, my mind racing as I tried to think of the next steps. When I got home, I found Jessica sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy. I rushed to her side, pulling her into my arms as she began to sob. I'm so scared, she admitted. What if he comes back? I held her tightly, feeling a protective instinct surging within me. He won't hurt you, I promise. I'll make sure of it, but we need to be smart about this. That night, we filed a report with the police detailing Jake's behavior and threats. They assured us they would keep an eye on the situation and that we could press charges if it escalated further. It was a small comfort, but I knew we had to take this seriously. As the days passed, I took extra precautions to ensure Jessica felt safe. I even installed security cameras around the house, hoping it would help ease her anxiety. The last thing I wanted was for her to feel trapped in this nightmare. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, something shifted in our relationship. The experience, while traumatic, had brought us closer together. Jessica began to lean on me more, seeking comfort in my presence. We spent late nights talking, sharing our fears and planning for a future that felt uncertain. The police kept us updated on Jake's whereabouts, and it became clear that he was spiraling. He had lost nearly all his endorsements, and it was only a matter of time before he faced the repercussions of his actions. Eventually, the pressure of the situation started to weigh on him, and he went quiet for a while. One afternoon, I received a notification on my phone that made my heart race. It was an alert from one of the bloggers who had been covering the story. They had received a tip that Jake was considering leaving the influencer scene entirely and was planning to make a public apology. I turned to Jessica, excitement bubbling inside me. This could be the end for him, I said, my voice filled with hope. If he admits to everything, he might finally be held accountable. When Jake finally went live with his apology, it was a moment I had been anticipating. He stood in front of the camera, looking haggard and defeated, admitting to his fraudulent practices and the pain he had caused. It felt surreal to watch him take responsibility, and I could see the comments flood. In some supportive, others harsh. But more importantly, I could see that the public was starting to turn away from him in droves. It was a hard pill for Jake to swallow, and I hoped that he would finally understand the damage he had done, not just to his career, but to the lives of others. As the weeks rolled on, life began to slowly return to normal for Jessica and me. We learned to navigate our fears together, and she began to reclaim the sense of self that had been lost amid the chaos. The love we had for each other was reignited, and I could see the light returning to her eyes. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I turned to her and said, I know this has been a rough road, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. You handled everything with such strength. She smiled softly, leaning against me. You were my rock through all of this. I don't think I could have done it without you. And in that moment, I realized that our bond had been forged in fire, stronger than ever. We had faced the storm together, and while the scars would always remain, they would serve as a reminder of our resilience. In the end, I learned that love is not just about the good times. It's about standing by each other when the world feels like it's crumbling. As we turned off the TV and settled into each other's arms, I knew we had emerged from the chaos with a deeper understanding of ourselves and our love. It was a bittersweet end to a turbulent chapter in our lives, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never let our love be overshadowed by the lies of someone else ever again.